Welcome to Bond Park. I'm Sarah Geidlinger.
And I'm Marshall Ward.
I'm Tamara Louks. I'm an arts management professional and business owner. I'm the co-owner of the Aunties Dandelion, a media arts collective, with my business partner, Gustal Saragote Paulette Moore.
Welcome to Bond Park.
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 We've got big news.
Do we ever? We have a brand new website.
And so many amazing things to check out on it.
Bondpark.com.
What can we find there?
You can listen to our episodes right on the site.
You can check out the Bond Park community blog.
You can find out how you can partner with us.
Oh, and the shopping. We have so much fun merchandise.
I'm going to buy myself the I'm the Marshall Ward tote.
Me too.
Bondpark.com. Check us out. Tamara, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited, and I've been listening to some of your podcasts, and it's really wonderful to hear about people I've never met and to see the incredible work that's happening in our community, which is really energizing and inspiring.
I'm so glad that you said that. Thank you. It feels, I don't know, special to me. It makes my heart warm. Marshall often brings up that our show was a way that we could connect and stay connected during the pandemic. And I often don't take time to reflect on that because we were just full steam ahead. We were just making the show. We were just go and making it happen. And I don't often go back and think, oh, this could really be highlighting people at a time when we need, I don't know, a time when we need that connection. Am I saying it right, Marshall? Am I saying my own feelings right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that was, everything felt very precarious. And it wouldn't be hard to kind of lose some sense or part of yourself or a sense of belonging anyway in your community along the way. There were lots of barriers there, that we had to navigate. So,
and if you actually, we started recording in 2019, and if you go back and listen to some of the intros of those first shows that we put out in early 2020, maybe around March, April, you can hear me introducing them like, "Hey, it's just me again. I saw a squirrel outside. What are you guys seeing?" And it's just such a different intro than what we have now, which is full of so much joy to meet new people.
I think the pandemic has changed so much, and hopefully for the better. I know for me, I lost my job because of COVID and spent working in arts and culture all my life. It was really hard to find work, obviously, like so many people. And I went down a little bit of a dark path for a while, wondering, what is my worth? Until my husband kicked me in the butt and said, if your job defines you, you've got a problem when you retire. So it was a good wake-up call, and I started enjoying the time to have to myself, to spend with my family. And one of the biggest things that I got out of it was my youngest graduated high school during COVID. And so spending that time with him while he figures out what's next for him was so important. And I reflect now and think if I was working full-time and traveling back and forth out of town to another community, I would have missed all of that. And spending time with my mom and my in-laws who are, getting up there in age, but still very active. But having that extra time, my mom and I wrote a book about my grandfather that I shared with you before, Sarah, and it was wonderful. And it really brought my family together because we got to share photos and stories and learn more about our history and what was important in our family as we settled in Waterloo region back in the early 1900s.
There's so much there. I want to take apart I want to just talk about one little thing that you said, which, again, Marshall brings up often. If your job defines you, we're doing this wrong. Marshall, I'll let you put this in your own words, but we often talk about, you're in a party, where we used to go to parties, or some people did. I like to stay home. And people say, "Oh, so what do you do?" And Marshall, why don't you take that part of this and run with it?
Yeah, I knew early in my 20s even that when you went to a social event and you were meeting strangers and people wanted to know, so what do you do? Right? And they're asking about your professional life and how you earn a paycheck. And I remember always feeling not comfortable with that. It's not that I was embarrassed by whatever job I was doing at the time. It was more like I wanted to express, well, I'm so much more than working in a department store or being a student or whatever job I was doing at the time. And I just always thought conversation should start with, I would like to answer the question. I watch lots of wrestling, you know what I mean? And I love antique markets, right? And things like that. If you really want to get to know me a little bit, I want to talk about those things and not how I earn a paycheck. So
I'm right with you on that. I've always been uncomfortable with that with that question, and partially because my career has been all over the place and I've never really felt I'm one thing, but also because there's so much more to who we are as human beings. And if we're not connected to ourselves first, our family and our communities and the environment around us, then we really don't have much to say anyways. So hopefully we are a little bit more than one little thing of what we do to make a paycheck.
We had some support from the Waterloo Region Community Foundation that changed the direction of our show in the sense that we could make it better and more and bigger. And that was really important to us. But we're a team of 2, but we also have a third person we work with. And any time through this process that someone said, like, so what do you do? We all just sort of wait for the other one to answer because we do so many things. We can't just say, I take the pictures or I do the interview or we've all done so many different things in different facets of this show that that's not the question. It should be more, what's the mission? What's the drive? That type of stuff. So I've really been feeling that through this show as well. But one thing that Marshall's really taught me about is storytelling. And this is something like, this is your alley, right? This storytelling is where I think your comfort zone is, that Goldilocks zone for Tamara, right? The artistic life, this book that you've written, the filmmaking. Where do we want to start tackling this?
Well, it's so funny because I've never thought of myself as an artist. I've always been a facilitator or supporter of artists. So when I worked at the Cambridge Centre for the Arts, I ran arts programs that artists led. I ran a gallery that artists filled it with their beautiful work. We had an artist in residence program. When I worked at Idea Exchange, again, supporting authors and artists through the Cambridge Arts Galleries program, and with Grand River Film Festival, supporting filmmakers. But I never actually made anything. And it's just now with this new business that I'm involved with, the Aunties Dandelion, where I'm starting to learn the production side of things. And it's so much fun. And I'm in really good hands with my business partner, Augusta Zaragote Paulette Moore, who is an incredible filmmaker and storyteller. And really, the title storyteller goes to her. I'm still learning. But it's been so much fun. And I think the beautiful thing is we get to share with our communities, whether they're local or afar, all of the really good work that's happening, like what you're doing with your podcast. I think the more people can come together and hear each other's stories, I think we feel supported and we understand that there's more in life to putting a roof over our head and putting food on the table, which obviously is our basics that we need, but we need to sustain each other with stories, and for ourselves, for our children, and for our future generations.
Sometimes when I read about the past of Waterloo Region, you can almost fall in love with a time and a period that you never got to experience because we've only been alive so long. But you can look back and really romanticize it and realize, wow, this was an incredible place back then too. Did you find that when researching and writing the book that you discovered things that you thought, wow, this is, I would like to imagine almost living at this time back then?
I don't know if I'd want to live back then, but I really appreciated a lot of the things they had done. And like, we had a train that ran from Preston to Kitchener. Go figure. We had, an opera house and movie theaters in each core. We don't have those anymore because, the advent of the mall, the outdoor malls, the indoor malls, they really took away from what the city centers were, which was a place for a community to gather and live together and do things and then go back to their homes, right? And they talk about the 15-minute walkable neighborhood. Well, yeah, we had it then. And obviously with our growth, you're not going to have that across a region as big as this or across a country as big as Canada. But there's still something really special about having an area close to home that you can identify with, where you can go to the farmer's market, where you can see your doctor, where your kids can walk to school and not have to be driven, those types of things. So I don't think I romanticize about the past, but I think we did do some things well that I hope we can move forward. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And Sara and I have interviewed people now who have either written their own biography or somebody else's biography. Mm-hmm. And the thing we hear time and again is how there's big conversations that happen about what's to be put in and what's to be left out. And did you have some of those experiences with deciding what is the story being told here and what doesn't need to be told?
We were lucky with the story. So the summer before my grandfather passed away, and he was a very special person to all of us, we had a big birthday celebration for my mom, and I have a large extended family, and pretty much all of us were there. And on the way home, my grandfather had said to my mom, I looked around and realized I had played a part in everybody's lives in some way, and it just made me so happy. Sorry, I got a little choked up.
I'm getting a little bit choked up on this side of the table. I'm going to be honest with you. That's beautiful.
And so my mom said, Dad, we should really hear your story. So over the next couple of weeks, she met with him and recorded, typed out his oral telling of his upbringing. And then she forgot about it. So when we were meeting during COVID, we were on Ancestry doing our historical, trying to see how far we could go back. And she remembered this story. And so we used that as the basis of the book. That was our story, was his telling. And then we filled it in with pictures. We found his parents' passports from when they came over from England to here, that picture of the boat they came on. And, so those were the kinds of things that we augmented and filled. Our biggest problem was, because there's so many people in our family, we're like, how big is this book going to be? Mm-hmm. How many pictures can we include?
How many volumes shall we create?
Yes. And of course, once people started seeing the pages that we were laying out, they were like, oh, let's do this picture. And oh, I have this picture. And oh, don't forget about this time when we did this, So I think editing photos was the hardest part. But the story itself was great. It was already there for us, which was lovely. He talked very openly. He served in World War II. He was injured there. They actually, I think this is the right term, they called it, they red blanketed him. He was hit by a shell, and they didn't think he was going to make it, but he did. But he had some really wonderful stories about his time there, and who ended up becoming his best friend, who he met there and married his sister. So I knew all of those stories, and of course I know my family story because we're so close. I guess the one story that's pretty funny that came to light was when my great-grandmother decided to come to Canada. Her husband, they were newly married at the time. Him and his brothers used to go to the pub a lot and carry on. And his sister had saved up for a hat. And one day they came home and she had put the hat on, they had taken the hat off her head and put it on the floor and danced around it and stepped on it and just destroyed her. And my grandmother said, that's that. I'm going to Canada. There's no drinking there. If you want to come with me, James, I've got my ticket. And if you don't, I'll see you later. And I was like, yes. That's where the strong women in my family come from.
Wonderful.
So that was a great story. And they came, and according to my grandfather, they never drank except for port at Christmas. So.
Oh my gosh, port. I miss port. I used to have that too.
What's that like holding your book for the first time?
It's awesome.
In your hands. Of course it is, right?
Yeah.
It must be. I think about how there's different ways. When my brother has written books, the first time he sees it is on the shelf of indigo, right? Like it's on the shelf. Some authors get them in boxes ahead of time, right? In the case of a Guinness World Record holder that we know, he and his partner just went to the store last week and flipped through the 2023 Guinness World Records, hoping his picture was in there, and it is. Those must be incredible experiences that you never forget.
I also told him that he should invest in some Sharpies and just go signing crazy.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
A signing bandit out there in the world.
Well, these are things you dream about for years. I've always dreamt about writing a book, right? And I can't imagine what that's like to finally hold it in your hands when it's done.
It was great. And my mom, she's so sweet. She had it sent to her house. And she's like, the book came in. I'm like, what does it look like? She goes, I'll open it with you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, open it now.
Don't wait for me.
Yeah. But she did. So we opened it together. It was fun.
I want to get into, you're talking about what to include, what photos. Now we're swapping this out. Somebody wants to put something else in. And Marshall and I are working on a documentary for a local nonprofit. And we're really struggling with that at the, the last bit that I am. Am I struggling more, Marshall, than you are?
No, it's a constant push and pull of, that has to go in.
Or is it too much
it's too
now?
much, yeah, take it out. Or it's okay without it. You know?
Now I've got all these now, and was it Dwight Storing that taught us that kill your darlings?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you
Pluck your flowers.
pluck
yeah.
your, like, you've got all of these babies that you're excited to include in your film, and you've got to leave some of them behind.
Or if you take something out, nobody who views it or hears it will know it was ever, or read it,
Yeah.
will ever know it was there to begin with. So
Yeah. So I hear you speaking about your book this way, but now that you're involved with the filmmaking process and all of the, in different facets and for different, totally different entities, what's that experience been like for you?
Well, I'm going to be working on my first film in 2023.
Congratulations.
As a producer. Thank you. I'm really excited and a little nervous, but more excited than anything. So far, the assets that we have, Paulette had already made. So I wasn't a part of the filmmaking process, but I've been a part of getting it out into the world and creating events around them, whether it's with a library or a post-secondary institution, that type of thing. I'm excited to start jumping into these kinds of things.
We're going to take a moment to hear from this episode's sponsors, some of our favorite businesses in town.
Bond Park is supported by Artline Salon. Artline is not like any salon you've ever seen. To truly get what Artline is about, you have to experience the experience. So whether you're looking for a subtle change or ready to debut a dazzling new look, Artline will work with you to create a masterpiece.
Artline is located in Belmont Village in Kitchener. You can call 519-585-0230 or visit them online at artlinesalon.com. They're also on Instagram. This holiday season, Artline Salon is running a campaign to raise food and funds for the food bank of Waterloo Region. If you stop by their salon, they've got all the boxes there. You can donate funds, like we said, or you can donate some items from their high needs list: canned fruit, vegetables, meat, fish, dry beans and pasta, hot and cold cereal, individually packed snacks, jams, spreads, peanut butter, and rice. So again, check that out at Artline Salon. The Food and Funds campaign at Artline will run from now until January 31st, 2023. Please support by donating one or more of those items that we mentioned, or stop by and donate some funds. We are also supported by Benjamin Tree Farm, located at 770 Benjamin Road in Waterloo.
Christmas trees bring joy into your home during the holiday season. You can harvest your own tree from 40 acres with thousands to choose from, or a beautiful selection of pre-cut trees. My family absolutely loves St. Nick's Picks, their gift shop. It's open throughout the Christmas season. It has everything. It has ornaments, small gifts, all made by over 70 local artisans. These items range from woodworking to knitting, handmade soaps, scented candles, and bath salts and chocolates. And Benjamin Tree Farm has truly become one of my family's magical Christmas traditions. We are supported by Clean and Tidy Cleaning Services.
Clean and Tidy is all about making life a little bit easier and a little less stressful for their clients. Serving Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, and surrounding areas, Clean and Tidy offers both residential and commercial cleaning services using safe, natural, and green products. In addition to cleaning and dusting, the Clean and Tidy crew will also fulfill requests like making beds, washing and folding laundry, and vacuuming furniture. Visit cleanandtidykw.com and book a free consultation. We are supported by Gifted in Belmont Village. Gifted was one of our very first sponsors also, and we are so grateful for that. They have some of the quirkiest, funkiest, and coolest gifts that you'll find anywhere in town. Whether you're looking for something nerdy, literary, cute, funny, bizarre, fuzzy, local, nostalgic, or unexpected, Gifted has it. And you're bound to find what you're looking for, even if you have no idea what you're looking for at Gifted. So shop online at giftedwaterloo.com and check them out on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, you can find Gifted right in Belmont Village.
Bond Park is supported by Winnie's Gluten-Free Kitchen in Belmont Village.
I love Winnie's. I lived the gluten-free life, and man, was I ever happy when I found this place. They've got loads of pre-made frozen meals, pizza dough, which is one of my favorites, and fresh baguette and breads right in the store. But for me, I get stuck at the dessert counter. I'm not really a sugary sweets person, but I never leave without their lemon squares, which I make Marshall eat as well. And he's like, I don't even care that they're gluten-free, right?
That's true.
And the butter tarts, cinnamon buns, eclairs, cannoli, so much more. Just absolutely the best gluten-free baking I have ever had. Check out all their scrumptious offerings at winniesglutenfree.com and follow them on social media. We are supported by Wordsworth Books, located in the vibrant heart of Uptown Waterloo. Wordsworth was our very first sponsor on Bond Park Podcast in January of 2020, and we are so grateful for that. It's also our favorite bookstore in the Waterloo region.
Yes, thank you, Wordsworth Books. Co-owners Mandy Browse and David Worsley are happy to special order any title you are looking for and pride themselves on being able to obtain the hard to find and the out of print. Support a local gem like Wordsworth Books, which is so much more than just a great bookstore. It is a one-of-a-kind gathering space and a vital part of the region's cultural community. Find Wordsworth Books online at wordsworthbooks.com or visit them at 96 King Street South in Uptown Waterloo. And now, back to our show.
Tell us exactly what's happening with the Grand River Film Festival and, sort of that whole process of creating the Aunties Dandelion.
Okay, so they're two very obviously different entities, but my work with the Grand River Film Festival started in year 2 of the organization when I was invited to join the board of directors. So that's how it started. And I was invited to really help set some governance in place and help shape how things were run. So that was a lot of fun. And during that time as well, we received some seed funding support from the city of Cambridge that was also supported by Idea Exchange. So after a couple of years on the board, they asked me if I would step in as the executive director, which I did for several years. And while I love the role, and I've always been quite lucky to work with really strong boards throughout the organization's history, having a paid staff person in such a small organization is not sustainable. So when the funding from the city ran out, my whole goal was to make sure that the organization could move forward as a completely volunteer-run organization. And so my focus outside of running all of the events, the festival and this high school program and the Cine Merge program, which was like an industry type program, was to really make sure that we had processes in place for succession planning and a strong volunteer program. So I'm happy to say that it has moved forward, and they are, I'm really not involved as much anymore. Like I said, I'm an advisor to the board, so I help out with grant writing. I do the onboarding for new directors because I have organizational history. But really, it's the group of the board of directors and all of their volunteer committees that are doing all the work, and I just get to hear about it and enjoy their efforts. So that's the Grand River Film Festival, and I have to say, of all the festivals that I've participated in and been involved with across the region, it's still my favorite because I love film. It brings together all the different art forms. It brings together writing and music and acting and design, and it's just such a wonderful way to enjoy someone's creative efforts with your community and learn so much. With the Aunties Dandelion, that came about serendipitously, and honestly, I never would have imagined I'd be where I am right now. So I was working at Laurier Brantford's campus. I was hired to lead a special project to undergo a feasibility study about creating a community-facing media arts hub where students and faculty would benefit from it. Of course, when COVID hit, they couldn't imagine moving forward a project that was about bringing people together. So the project got shelved. But while I was there, my partner and I, Adrian Beam, we were able to get funding, and we built a podcast studio because what we heard from our stakeholder engagement series was that podcasting was the number one thing people wanted to get involved in. So through the Brantford Community Foundation and the City of Brantford, we were able to build a really beautiful podcast studio. We hired Avery Moore-Kloss, who's a fabulous podcaster, as our first podcaster in residence. And we hosted community workshops that were supported by the City of Brantford that were sold out, full to capacity. And with that, we also had, for Avery's residency, hours where people could come in and speak to her about their projects and get support and guidance, and also use our studio to record in. We were only there a short time, maybe 3 months, but it was so busy. It was so rewarding to see so many people want to use the space. And when we realized that everything was closing down and our jobs were ending, I had reached out to them specifically because I really liked what they were doing and just said, hey, if you ever need any support, here's my home email. Please reach out anytime. I really think what you're doing is awesome. Many months go by. December of 2020, they reached out and said, hey, we've kept making podcasts. We made a short film. We launched a website, and we'd love to get our film into film festivals. Can you help us? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And that's where it all started. The funny backstory to this, though, is that I can't remember, 3 or 4 years back, a friend of mine invited me last minute to go see Jeremy Dutcher at a concert in Guelph. And it was in an old church downtown Guelph, and we're sitting up in the top balcony, and it was just Michelle and I. And then this group of people came in, and they were kind of loud and having a really good time. And so we moved over and they came in and they're talking to Jeremy who's on stage. And we're like, oh, they know the singer. That's kind of cool. Turns out Paulette was one of those people. We have a lot of synergies. We have a lot of, we balance each other really well. Paulette's very creative and out there. She knows so many people. Like, she's got an amazing history. She's worked for National Geographic and Discovery Channel. She's taught at post-secondary institutions. She worked for the UN. She's traveled all over the world. She's a Mohawk language speaker. Like, she's just such a fascinating person. I feel like I'm getting a free education working with her. And then I bring the sort of organizational development side of things and operations and grant writing and budgeting, that type of thing. So we're a really good balance. And the great thing about our working relationship is we decided to do a strat plan in 2 different ways. One was to do your traditional SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and look at the business from a very practical side. And then the other is we used an Indigenous-focused strat planning way of being really mindful about why we're doing this, what the impact is to communities and to ourselves and our families. And then a third lens that we looked at it was through our own selves. What do we want out of this? What's important to us? And so when we feel like things are getting busy or we're not sure if we should pursue a certain project, we come back to that core foundation of why are we here working together? What is it that drives this particular part of the project? Will it be meaningful to us and our families? Can we do it? And what will that mean when it's done? Like, is there impact out there? So I think having those 3 different lenses was really great for us, and it's really grounding for us when we get excited about new opportunities. And yeah, we just work so well together.
And the website is so dense with like rich work. So the podcast, there's all kinds of stuff going on. You can't just you're doing the same thing as us in a way, which is we're not talking about one thing here. We're not going to the Bond Park podcast to learn about paper clips or specifically the history. There's a lot going on. And same thing is true of the the Aunties Dandelion podcast. But then some of the films and film trailers that are on the site. Like, I think we spoke when we were chatting before we got together about Veronica, which is a heartwarming little film, but it's also funny, and I think that we need this kind of work right now when we're looking towards, what are our local, heroes of film, because they tend to be, when I'm looking around, and maybe my view is a little small, but when I'm looking around, they tend to be very marketing based or sort of big cinema based, like that kind of thing, where we're more interested in, people's stories and giving them space to tell that story. And I think that's what a lot of this work looks like coming out of there.
It's definitely community based. So all of our work is guided by telling stories about revitalizing communities through stories of land, language, and relationships. That's, if it doesn't fit within that idea or framework, then we're not going there. We both really believe that, we've all, as human beings, we're all human beings. We've all got original instructions somewhere in our past. Most of us have forgotten them and are completely detached. And now, as we go through this shift, and it's exciting and scary, but I really hope, my deepest hope is that we start looking at Indigenous communities around the world who have stayed true to their original instructions about how we live on this planet, because this is our home. And we need to stop looking at things through a monetary lens. So if we start looking at things through a lens of, for me, it's about love. If we are guided by love, then we will make the right choice. Money comes secondary, and I do believe we have everything we need on this planet. It's just not being shared properly and being cared for properly. So a lot of the stories, if you listen to our podcast, we're talking about people who are doing amazing work in their communities that often goes unnoticed. And it doesn't need to be celebrated. And it's funny because, I don't know why I was thinking about this earlier this morning, but I was thinking about celebrity culture and how we put people up on a pedestal because they're a good actor or athlete or have billions of dollars. It's so backwards, and and dismissive of all the incredible work that's being done day by day by our neighbors. And I think if we take time to, and I feel bad for our kids, honestly, I really do, because they're just inundated with it on social media. And it's, to them, they're being told these stories that are not healthy, are not what I deem to be success, or what we should think of as success. Success is living a healthy life, surrounded by people you care about, and sharing your talents. We all have talents, and they don't have to be spectacular. They just have to come from a place of kindness. So I hope these stories and these ways of living and these ways of being with each other become the forefront of storytelling. And we do see that. I see that with your podcast, with all the people you talk about, and their backgrounds are so diverse, but they're doing great things that make this community so special, as all communities are when we take time to listen to each other and visit.
Tamara, I want to ask you about film festivals today, because I made 3 documentaries back 15 and 20 years ago, little independent films with the support of CTV. And when I wanted to enter film festivals across Canada and a few in the US, like Texas and New York State and stuff, I would find out where they all were and if my film was a good fit for that festival. There'd be an entry fee somewhere between, it might be $20, $25. The most expensive ones were $40 for the bigger ones. And I would burn my DVD minus Rs, right, the documentary out of those. I'd have some kind of statement, blurb about my film, and I would mail them off in bubble envelopes, right? And I would get it back in the mail, maybe 4 rejection letters for every one that said, we're happy to show your film, kind of thing. And then I would often try to figure out I would see when it's happening. And sometimes a friend would be in that town and be able to tell me and go to it and say there were 40 people there. And I was thrilled. These were strangers, right, who were going to see my film. And that was all incredibly fulfilling for me, just knowing people across Canada, and in the case a few times in the States, were seeing my film. Does that in any way look like or represent what it looks like today for an independent filmmaker to try to get their film screened in independent film festivals across North America?
Well, making the film is one job, and then getting it out there is a completely other one. Everything now is digital. So a really great asset is Film Freeway. You can create a profile for yourself as a filmmaker and upload your 1 film or your 5 films, however many you have. What they also do then is all the most film festivals are on there as well. And you can filter by category. So let's say we're making an Indigenous film. We'll look for film festivals that have Indigenous programming, or if you're looking for awards, that type of thing. For some people, they might be looking for Oscar qualifying film festivals. It may be that you want to fit into a genre. Like if you're a horror filmmaker, you'll want to look for horror film festivals, that type of thing. But it's exhaustive. There are film festivals all over this planet. I mean, in Toronto alone, there's hundreds upon hundreds of film festivals. And unfortunately, some of them are all about the submission fees. So you can go anywhere from having a waiver code from a film festival to submit your film and it's free, to paying over $100 a submission. So you have to be really strategic once you have your film and decide what you want to do with it. You need to look at what kind of budget do I have for submission fees, because it is going to cost you. Why do I want my film out there? What do I hope to get from it? Do I want it to simply be a screening, or do I want to be a larger part of the conversation, sit on a panel, that type of thing? Or do I want to win an award? Or am I hoping to get to the Oscars, if that's as big as you want to go? And it's a lot of work, because there's film festivals pretty much every day of the year around this world. And then you also have to look at what's your capacity? Like, if I get invited to this festival, can I get there? Are they going to pay for my travel, or am I going to have to pay for that? There's lots of different players out there.
We talked to Janice Jolie.
She's great.
Yeah, as part of our Air 25 Artist in Residence series. And she was telling us, I was nominated for a KW Oktoberfest Woman of the Year award, and I couldn't afford the ticket for the dinner where I would find out. It is a problem for artists, for sure.
It is, yeah. I always say start with your hometown, for sure. I mean, if there's a film festival here, which we have one, that's a great place to start. And then start looking at maybe other filmmakers who you align with or other genres that you align with, that you can be a little bit more strategic. There's a great resource, and I listened to his workshop this past year, Sean Farnell. He's on LinkedIn, but he worked for TIFF and Hot Docs, and his whole thing is about film festival strategy.
Why do you think sometimes Waterloo Region forgets Cambridge? There's so much happening. I mean, do you feel that sometimes it's left out of the conversation? And I feel like we need to make t-shirts like Cambridge is cool, or like worth the drive to Cambridge. There's so much going on.
Oh, there's so much to talk about there. I mean, we did at one point have a really engaged and energetic and supported art scene. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge right now is funding. Artists and arts organizations need funding. And especially coming out of a pandemic, the obvious supports, of course, go to our basic necessities, our housing, our food, our mental well-being. Those are all important. But I did hear you say on another podcast too, Sarah, how much people, of course, engaged with the arts during the pandemic. And we have to look at the arts differently. We need to celebrate them for what they are. They are a part of who we are as human beings. They are a part of our history, a part of our future, how we imagine what's going to be next. And they're a part of our well-being. Without the arts, we're not healthy.
I mean, it could be something as simple as it's just not being promoted well enough, although I really do feel like people look at the region as KW, and I don't know if it's because they have the same shared King Street and you don't really see a transition from Kitchener to Waterloo. Is it easy to just say to use KW as a reference to the region as opposed to understanding there's 3 cities and 4 townships? But in terms of Cambridge itself, like, there are so many beautiful things here. Obviously, we have gorgeous rivers and trails and built heritage. But we also have great theater. We have Drayton's main office here. We have Cambridge Community Players. We have the Cambridge Center for the Arts and Idea Exchange with the Cambridge Art Galleries. We have beautiful murals, a sculpture garden. I'm not sure why it gets left to the side, but I do really feel from my various work across Waterloo Region with different types of organizations is one of the things we need to do is stop working in silos. I really do feel like we need to collaborate more, whether it's sharing resources, sharing spaces, sharing marketing line items, especially for smaller groups, festivals, or organizations. And we really need to be looking at just supporting arts in general. Like we all, we can go global. We all live on the same planet or we all live in the same region. Why aren't we embracing the arts as a whole and not worrying about where it is, but that it's just reflective of the communities we live in and shoring up those beautiful people that make all this great art?
Bond Park is made possible with the support of the Kitchener Public Library and the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation.
Our show is produced by Sarah Geidlinger
And Marshall Ward.
with audio engineering by Sarah Geidlinger.
Bond Park's original music is by Alan Lung. Harry, still with us? We want to tell you about a fun project that we have. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We have another podcast called An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. Here's Colin Hunter of Kayfabe News to tell you all about it.
Welcome to An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. I'm Colin Hunter from Kayfabe News. Marshall is utterly obsessed with professional wrestling. Sara is utterly perplexed by professional wrestling. On each episode of An Unscripted Spectacle, Marshall and Sara talk with a different guest from the world of wrestling. Promoters, referees, journalists, and current and past stars of the Squared Circle to talk deeply about the strange magic of professional wrestling that has enchanted Marshall his whole life. Can they turn Sara into a fellow connoisseur of professional wrestling? She'll need some convincing.
I find out who Jimmy Corderas is. Who the heck are you?
Oh, well, that's a good question. For those who don't know, I spent the better part of over 2 decades working in WWF/WWE, mostly as a referee inside the ring.
I have the honor of meeting the magnificent Lufisto.
I heard that you were described as the first lady of hardcore. I've just recently found out what hardcore is.
Yeah, thanks to Madman Bondo.
When I've learned that I was going to be inducted, it was like, it is now my time to tell the story of women's wrestling. Because so many times I've heard, oh, this is the first time this happens in women's wrestling history. And I'm like, no.
I learned all about the storytelling and writing process from Tom Casiello.
Yeah, I was in soap operas for 14 years. I was at Young and the Restless last. That was from 2009 to 2011. And so I thought, I'll go in for the interview. I'll be honest with them. If I blow it, I blow it. Not the end of the world. And I was there for 6 years. And I rose up the ranks to managing lead writer. And it was the most insane time period of my entire life.
I got a new skincare regime from RJ City.
Checking out your hair, and I wish that mine looked like yours. You have beautiful locks.
Thank you. The secret, this isn't a plug, it feels like an endorsement, is aloe vera. I have it here. I put it on my skin. I put it in my hair. I use the gel. I put a couple drops of peppermint in.
I have a plant right there on my
Good.
fridge.
Cut it open, squeeze it out, and put it, honestly, wherever you want. It's good for you.
I find out that Colt Cabana is just famous enough that he can still buy groceries. And Tyson Kidd tells me all about the People's Elbow. Who knew?
Basically comes to a complete stop, then brings his leg over the guy like he's going to do a leg drop. But the leg like keeps circling past the guy, and then he drops an elbow on the guy.
Oh, and the elbow represents like all the people of the fans?
Like
he's been voted, he's going to drop this elbow?
Well, like he started calling himself the People's Champion, and then that move just became the People's Elbow.
And then there's also, as you know, there's the People's Strudel.
Yeah. I mean, there's the People's Eyebrow. There's a lot of the people. Got a lot of people.
So check out an unscripted spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. Available anywhere you get your podcasts.